everyone. My name is Jesus Rosales. I am a bilingual prevention specialist here at Verity. Here I am with a group of colleagues, wonderful individuals who are going to be talking about the specific panel discussion of how to support male survivors, specifically in regards to Sexual Assault Awareness Month, also known as SAM. Just a little background and introductions of ourselves. My name is Jesus Rosales, like I was saying, the bilingual prevention specialist here at Verity. I do reside from the Bay Area. I recently graduated from Sonoma State University, and luckily and happily, I came into Verity, and I found a new passion in my career, a new passion in what I want to do with my life.
Hi, my name is Bryn Bogart. I am the new detention advocate for Verity. So what my role typically is I will go into the Sonoma County jail and support clients there, and also answer crisis line calls from the jail and such, and just support clients with as much as I can. I am also from the Sonoma County area, from the Bay Area, and I have had kind of a passion for this type of stuff for a while, at least since college. And I have been working in human services for about almost 4 years now. And that's a little bit about me.
I am Bob Greenberg. I'm a victim survivor of male sexual abuse as a child, and I'm also a licensed MFT psychotherapist specializing in the treatment of male trauma and male sexual abuse issues, and very happy to be here.
Hi there, I am Brozovic. I am a male survivor of childhood sexual assault. I've been active in my recovery journey for about 10 years now, even though it's been about 28 years since I was sexually abused. And I am an outspoken advocate and volunteer for numerous agencies and organizations that help bring the message of male recovery to the spotlight. I'm glad to be here.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Bryn. And thank you, Bob, for introducing yourselves. Now we're going to be moving forward with the panel discussion of what this is going to be about. I will be providing four talking points in the form of questions. Basically, talk about experiences and talk about how we could come across as supporters for any individual who discloses their situations, their experiences, their journey to us. So to start it off, a fair trigger warning for anyone who is also watching this, just in case if anyone is feeling uncomfortable or this is a new topic for themselves. Just wanted to give that trigger warning for whoever is watching this. To start off with the first question, if whoever wants to start off, go ahead. It is, what are the barriers for male survivors to disclosing sexual assaults?
Well, I'll start off, if it's okay. To me, the difficulties center around barriers to disclosure for male victim survivors, and that includes a lack of accurate information and a number of myths and stereotypes about male survivors that create a really unsafe environment for victim survivors to disclose. I also feel like a lack of role models for males is another part of that, and that's why I'm really appreciate opportunities like this to be able to speak out and talk about being a male victim survivor myself.
Great, thank you. I'll go next. Some things when dealing with barriers, I was just thinking when dealing with male survivors or victims is definitely always validating their experience, because that might be something that is a barrier to them disclosing or reporting or even talking to people about what's happening. So always validating their experience, validating that what happened to them was wrong, and just making sure all the emotions that come with it. They know that trauma can happen in many different ways, and it can look very different depending on what person or how a person reacts to certain things. So I think definitely validating is one of the most important ways to make sure that someone can feel comfortable and be in that safe space.
And I will certainly echo, I guess, a lot of what we've already heard, which is, unfortunately, there's a lot of cultural and society stereotypes that we put on to males in general, and then also what we put on to, maybe victims of sexual assault, especially males. And so, unfortunately, having to go up against a lot of those stereotypes can be a very daunting challenge that really creates quite the barrier for men to be able to find what is a true safe space, being able to define really what a safe space is, and how is it that we're going to use that safe space and be able to actually start talking about the things that we experienced in our childhood or in our past.
One of the things that I think about in regards to this is this environment, this difficult environment for male victim survivors, is the male, I call it the male sexual stereotype. Some people refer to it under the heading of masculine toxicity. And it essentially is a number of beliefs and myths about males that precludes the identification of the possibility of them being victimized. And in fact, in a lot of ways, the male stereotype and victimization are incompatible according to the stereotype. Males have to always be in control, they have to always be the aggressor, always want sex. They're never, they're never out of control, and so it basically cannot be a victim according to that. And so when males are victimized, they often will feel like their masculinity is really in question, and it's a pretty daunting task to disclose in the face of that.
I would certainly also add into that, unfortunately, as we commonly say, this, sometimes the physical scars can heal, but the emotional ones are the ones that take a while. When at least from my experience, when it comes down to kind of one of those barriers, it's really around this idea that, family creates this idea of who it is that we're supposed to be in this world. And as Bob was saying, what does it mean to be a man? And I feel like a lot of times when something like this happens, it really starts getting at the root of an identity issue. So not only is it these scars that we're battling in the forms of physical and emotional and maybe spiritual, but it also becomes a very deep in identity, issue that we start to challenge is, well, what happens if we were sexually abused by a male? Does it make me homosexual? And that's not always necessarily the case. If I was abused, does it mean that I'm going to abuse others? That's certainly not the case. And so by having a lot of these kind of internal identity questions, it's really some deep stuff that we don't typically share with strangers, and we certainly don't want to share it with our loved ones around us, because then they might have a completely different perception of maybe who we are or what we're capable of as human beings, and really it changes the way that maybe they paint a picture of who we are. And so kind of getting through some of those true identity challenges in the process while seeming hard at first, it certainly it can be a barrier for many, for sure.
Yeah, and thank you for speaking on that whole barrier and the challenging process, which will lead into our next talking point, which is how can someone create a safe space, and how can they promote the growth of that within the safe space? Now going and talking about how you were saying that some individuals may have trouble talking about their experiences, right? Their assault, and questioning, what if they disclose this to someone that they trust? And whether the person that they're trusting is questioning them, like, oh, but I thought you were straight. I thought, why wouldn't you like that, right? So in this instance, how can someone create that safe space? How can someone create it and promote the growth of it, where not only that person is there to disclose their information, but they could allow other people coming in and talk about it and form these ways of healing?
Wow, that's a pretty that's a pretty complicated question. All these things kind of feed in together. Accurate information, about statistics. I'll often make a point, of looking for an opportunity to tell people who are trying to address this issue for the first time, that approximately 1 in 6 males are sexually abused by the time they're 18, and, if they're young men or college students or teenagers, tell them, if you're in your classroom and you've got, 24 people in there, there's probably four other victims in there. And it's a real eye-opener. It begins to change the context that they're the only one that this has happened to, and by implication, there must be something pretty weird about them. So kind of trying to address that issue, that it's about them and something wrong with them, and they're the only one, is really a key piece for me.
I was also thinking maybe the idea, I just realized I think I answered the second question the first time around. But also the idea, and Brian had mentioned this earlier, is the idea of camaraderie. And that male camaraderie is really, really important. And maybe creating a space where other survivors can talk about what has happened to them, so that people don't feel like, oh, this has just happened to me, or, oh, this is my fault. And just knowing how common it is and that you're not alone, I think would be a huge benefit to this issue that we have.
Totally. Finding another, what we might call like a male survivor group. I know there's a lot of different, male survivor retreats. It's the idea of just really coming together as a group, finding connection, building trust with one another, and really being able to understand that, what is unfortunately common between us is the thing that actually builds us stronger as a group. And now that we have this safe space and we have this trust built in, then we can really get rid of all of the thoughts of the world and society and culture, and say, you know what, we really start getting into this idea of who we really are. We really start finding our identity, not in, the victimhood of maybe what it is that we went through, but we find it in this survival mechanism that we've gone through in life. And we come to find that the same survival mechanism that I employed is very, similar to the survival mechanism that, my fellow, brothers in recovery or in this, recovery journey have been on too. And so, I've never been in war, at least from a a military standpoint, though I did grow up in a military family. But I can only imagine that the camaraderie, the brotherhood, that common bond, built around a mission of hope and healing is just as strong in a group of male survivors as it would be for a group of soldiers out on the front lines of battle, where truly each other's lives is in each other's hands, and that's, I feel like, what it feels like to be in a male in one of those groups is we finally have been able to toss aside all the voices of the world, and we finally get to hear our true voice, and the deepest, darkest secrets that I've ever kept, I now have in your hands, and I trust you with them. And so it's monumental in creating a safe space for a recovery journey.
I'm often struck by how in different social situations where I'll find an opportunity to disclose being a victim survivor, and there will frequently be kind of this awkward silence, and the conversation will often change to some other topic. And almost without fail, at some point later on, I will have men come up to me and literally whisper in my ear that it happened to them too. And so, it's such an example of the power of people speaking out about it, so that other people can realize that they're not the only one.
Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing their answers. I just to give my input as well, I feel that based off of what going off of what Brian was saying of creating these safe spaces where we're able to welcome individuals and acknowledge that we are the type of people that us as allies to be able to hold this conversation with them, right? Be able to say, you know what, like I am an open, safe space for anyone that wants to talk to me. Not specifically saying, specifically come talk to me about this or that, but basically kind of give those hints, those little notes, right? Because sometimes people don't want to disclose. Sometimes they're like, I don't want anyone knowing that I'm going to talk to this person specifically regarding sexual assault, right? So possibly throw out those hints like, oh, if anything is going on at home regarding so-and-so, I am here as an open, safe individual. You could talk to me about emotions. You could talk to me about feelings. Talk to me about how your day is going, just to create that safe space for them to disclose anything, right? I always extend a hand to people just so that they know that I'm an individual that they could trust and that they could talk to. So now going to the next talking point, are there any resources for male survivors that y'all know about?
There's always Verity. You can always call our crisis line. We're always here to listen. You can get an advocate for ongoing support, emotional support. There's always Verity.
There's a tremendous number of books and literature specifically about male survivors, their stories, compilations of them telling their stories, conceptual kind of ways of addressing it. I mean, if you look it up, just on Amazon, or if you go to one of the websites specifically for male survivors, which there are several, 1 in 6 is one, and themalesurvivor.org is another. They have library and literature listings and articles. And then there's some 12-step oriented organizations, Sexual Assault Survivors Anonymous and Incest Survivors Anonymous. And they sometimes will have male-only groups in addition to possibly co-ed groups. And that's something that also can be accessed, I think, online by looking them up. And then there's therapy groups. I do an adult male survivors of child sexual abuse survivors group in Sonoma County.
I always certainly like to start off. Of course, Verity is a fantastic resource. You know, they've been in our community for at least the Sonoma County and surrounding area community for a really long time, and there's a fantastic group as you can see her today, doing some amazing things at Verity. Also, as Bob had said, 1and6.org is one of my favorite places where they have what we call the Bristlecone Project, which is a group of male survivor stories, which they've created not only the interaction there on the website, but they have hundreds, if not maybe up to thousands of videos on YouTube regarding different topics too. So if you're a male who is looking to start the recovery journey and you have questions specifically around starting the recovery journey, there's a whole set of YouTube videos regarding other male survivors like myself and how we started each one of our journeys. So those are always some really great resources. And then also, another 12-step like group that I always like to throw out there is Celebrate Recovery. It's a group that's tailored around really healing, the hope and the healing coming through any sort of hurt, habit, or hang up. And so, especially around male survivors, if it's a hurt from being abused or assaulted, sometime in your life, and there's some amazing groups that we have. I know here in Sonoma County, where we're working with a large group of male survivors to really get over not only some of those traumatic effects from the abuse, but also some of what I call like some of the sideline type of effects. So, did you find control becoming an issue in your life, and you now have a control issue because, at one point things were out of control and you didn't have the control. And so now you try to control everything. Maybe you found yourself in, addictions of other things to try to soothe the wounds. Maybe you found yourself addicted to pornography. And so there's certainly a lot of different resources out there for not only the initial abuse itself and kind of walking through the beginning steps of those journeys, but also a lot of the other outlying, other side effects that come with the recovery journey.
Thank you for bringing that up because, we kind of, I forgot about the other things that you can have as a support group, like AA or something like that. If that is something that you use to self-medicate or anything like that, there is also like Sonoma County Mental Health, things like that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. So in this instance, it's really well to know any resources, not specifically, regarding, male survivors or victims for survivors, but also, to know that I will call them like variables. What else what have they used that they have been addicted to, sort of, to cope and to heal. Now, going on that coping and healing, we are going to talk about our last talking point of the day, which is how can healing and coping become a journey, right? So now we are looking into this, the aftermath of it, right? I know that from my instance, to answer this question on my end, I know that coping and healing, there's no timeline for it, right? Whenever I talk to, when I do presentations, I tell them, like, there's no timeline. Don't feel rushed to cope. Don't feel rushed to heal, right? Because everyone processes different things slowly, right? Or processing it at your own pace, however someone feels and however they are comfortable with it. Like coping and healing, it's on its own timeline, right? Every individual is unique. They're different, and they all know themselves. I know my personal body, and I'm pretty sure everyone else knows their personal limits and what they're comfortable with, right? So coping and healing, there's no timeline for it. Do not feel rushed when it comes to it. Take it slowly if you want to. Take it at your own pace.
In kind of following up on that, I often find myself telling men who are considering addressing the issue that I acknowledge what a difficult thing to do it is to do, and how much, takes a lot of courage, and that it's okay not to do it. And I think people often find that kind of reassuring. In my experience, the truth of the matter is, in reality, is that the vast majority of male survivors, victim survivors, do not address the issue. And not because there's something wrong with them or they're too weak, whatever. It's because it's very difficult to do. It's a daunting task. And indeed, I think honoring, people's individual needs and rhythms around it, what kind of forum works for them, whether it's to be in an anonymous situation, maybe an online group, to be in therapy, to maybe just read and educate themselves about the issue. Any of that is a really significant contribution.
I just want to add to that a little bit, and you had touched on this already a little bit, just the idea that every journey looks different. Like you were saying, it's okay to not want to acknowledge what happens. That's totally fine. And just really reiterate or just really ensure that your journey is not going to look the same as everybody else's. And it might be similar to other people's, but it's still yours, and it's still your individual, unique story.
Totally. Couldn't echo that better myself. The journey that somebody embarks on when they want to, I think, begin to process experiences that they might have been through. As I had previously said, it really creates a lot of layers. And when you start kind of peeling back one layer, you realize that there's a whole nother layer there. And maybe this layer is rooted in bitterness and anger, and maybe the next layer is rooted in trust, and maybe in the layers just keep going and going. And so, the process that I've experienced in recovery, while it has certainly not been easy at times, what I have experienced is that it certainly gets better. The experience that I've had is that hope and healing is out there. It might be hard to grasp for it. It might be hard to even imagine that that's possible. But the load that I was personally carrying around when I held in and swept everything under a rug and said, oh, I can just keep doing this without ever unloading this burden, it got very heavy. And it got heavy to the point where it was destroying me. And so on your journey, I would echo a lot of the words that we hear in different recovery circles, and it's easy does it. Easy does it. You're going to take a step forward and you might take two back, or you might take two forward and one back, right? But really start creating a vision for what's out there. And what it is that there is hope and healing. But just, I would urge someone who is maybe sitting on that fence of saying, is now the right time to just step forward? Just start looking. Just start looking. Because the right time will come, and the burden will get lighter.
One of the things in regards to that I like to suggest to people who are trying to figure out how to address or navigate their own victimization is the possibility that they could use their experience to help somebody else. I think it's one of the most healing things that somebody can experience around victimization and trauma, whether, at some point somebody's got a relative or a nephew or a friend or a buddy, a neighbor, and, they're able to recognize that they're struggling or might be struggling with this issue around sexual abuse or sexual assault, and to say something indicating that they have some understanding of the issue, that they have some acceptance of people around that, or even disclosing that it happened to them too, is a tremendously healing experience for people.
Yeah, so thank you, Bob, Brian, Bryn, for answering these questions. I know I did mention that that was the last talking point. Now we're going towards the closing remarks. Does anyone have anything else they want to voice, any information they want to end this panel with so that the viewers could know, or just anything that y'all want to say, feel free.
I would just say that if you're watching this, listening to this, no matter what whether it's here in a few weeks or a few months or a couple of years from now, just know that if you're on that fence and you're tired of carrying around a heavy burden, just know that we love you, we trust you. There is a safe space out there. And I just urge you to get connected, talk to someone, and just really try to find some other survivors. Because there's no burden that is too heavy that we can't seem to find some relief and mercy from. There is no dark path that is too dark that you cannot come back from. In my experience, I have been to the bottom, and I have seen the end of my life flash before my own eyes, and it's a vision that I never want to see again. But I found hope and healing, and I hope that if you're in that place, or if you've ever been in that place, I want you to know there's some amazing people like Verity out there that are working hard every day to make a difference and to create a safe space for you. So please get connected.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Brian. I appreciate hearing that. I think that I would want to, echoing some of what you've said, for people to realize that they don't have to be alone with the issue. And there are many ways to address it and explore it. And the key is finding a safe way to do that. Sometimes people will think, oh my God, if I start to address this, I'm going to have to confront people and disclose and, have all these kind of images of, that just seem impossible. And it doesn't have to be like that. You can read some articles, you can write in a journal, you can, look for other opportunities to participate or connect with other people. There's really infinite possibilities. And that's really the key. You don't have to be alone with it.
Yeah, I think both of you said it perfectly already, is that you don't have to do this alone, and you're not alone, really. Whether you know people are victims or not, you're still not alone. There still is this community out there that exists and wants you to heal and wants you to feel safe.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Truly appreciate Bob, Brian, and Bryn for being here and talking importantly about this subject specifically. And on that note, we just want to say thank you, and this is the conclusion of our panel.